Welcome back, everybody. Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, I'm going to be answering some more questions here this week. I've had some really good ones, and some of these I just thought, I think these are going to go over well with the audience. And one of the users on Twitter asked me, what got you into guns? Why are you such a, dyed-in-the-wool gun guy and everything like that? And I got to thinking, maybe this question's actually a pretty good question overall. I've been asked it before, but I never thought about really, just dropping an answer and articulating it to people. A lot of anti-gunners look at gun people as being, maybe a little bit irrational or crazy, or maybe they prepare a little too much, or, whatever their reasoning is for the way they feel about our lifestyle. But maybe even gun people that are into guns might see an advanced, let's just say an advanced collector or someone who's really hardcore into guns and kind of go, well, what got him to this point? What got you there, right? Well, I guess I'll just start by, talking about, the early days as a young man growing up in the South. I think I can speak for a lot of people that, boys in the South are raised on guns. We're around them a lot. We're exposed to them quite a bit. And of course, I was exposed to guns at a very young age. I'm talking 22s as young as 4 or 5 years old. So I've been around firearms my whole life, but is that enough to make someone just kind of go off the real, dyed-in-the-wool deep end as being a really hardcore gun guy? Maybe not so much. There's plenty of people who are raised around firearms, and then later in life they wind up, they might own a revolver and a shotgun and maybe a hunting rifle, maybe a 10/22 or something like that, but they may not own like an AK and an AR and a SCAR and all sorts of other, types of things. Is that to say that they're not good gun owners? Of course not. It just means that some people don't exactly go quite as far down the rabbit hole as others. So what was my first exposure to gun control? This is probably an interesting thing to talk about. My grandmother, okay? So I remember early on, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I remember my grandmother having the talk with my grandpa. She said, Bruce, the grandson's been coming around the house a lot, and he's been staying with us like every other weekend, and I know we have the guns in the cabinet, but I really want to try to, I remember them having this discussion. She said, well, I really would like the guns out of the house. And I remember my grandpa looking so dejected. He was so disappointed because, he's a gun owner. He had his hunting rifles, he had a Browning automatic rifle, he had a couple of, I think he had a 1911 and a Smith & Wesson Model 59 and a Browning high power. He had a couple of Ruger 10/22s. I recall, I think he had one of those 750 or 760 Woodsmaster 30-06 Remington auto-loading hunting rifles. They were really popular back then. I think he had a Browning A5. Winchester Model 12, so I digress. The point is, he had, a decent collection of guns. I'd say probably 18 to 24 guns overall, with most of those being long guns and shotguns and things like that. But I remember that conversation occurring. And I remember sometimes later, obviously, not only were all the guns gone, but so was the entire cabinet that the guns were in. And later on in life, I ended up learning that he sent most of those guns to his brother's house, who did not have any children or anything like that. So whether or not he got those back later in life, I don't know. However, the point remained is that Grandma put her foot down and she wasn't exactly having it. Now, fast forward a few years later, obviously Grandpa got me into 22s and pellet rifles and things like that. I started out shooting air guns from a really early age. Of course, everybody had their Daisy Red Ryder and their, I think at the time, Daisy also made this pump action silver gun with a long lever on it. I don't even remember the model of it, but, first you get your little Daisy Red Ryder, and then you get your, advanced guns you can pump up a little bit more powerful, and then I think after one of the neighbors' lights at their house got shot out by what I swear was a ricochet, that put an end to that around the household there. But then eventually I upgraded into a 22, and he bought me a single shot 20 gauge Winchester shotgun. So I had a little 20 gauge single shot. I had a 22 single shot. It was a Winchester Model 121 single shot. I still have it actually. I probably won't ever get rid of that 22, but that was my first 22, was the Winchester Model 121, and it was a single shot. But the point is, I guess it's just safe to say that I got into guns because I was raised around guns. So it was sort of an intricate part of being a man in the South is being raised around guns. Now, is that so much the case now? This was during the 80s. Is that so much the case now that kids are raised around guns as much? I don't want to say that the culture is dying or anything like that, or that the culture is going away or is any diminished form than what it was when I was a kid. In fact, I would say the culture has grown in leaps and bounds. I mean, now you have younger folks, younger kids that are shooting, full auto 22s and suppressed rimfire pistols and using suppressors and shooting ARs. And I didn't have access to all that stuff when I was a kid. The first AR that I ever saw, I bought with my own money the week after I turned 18, okay? And it was a Bushmaster XM177, and that was in the band days. So you had, only 2 or 3 or 4 companies maybe really producing anything like that. It wasn't like now where you have thousands of, it seems like there's seemingly thousands of manufacturers making ARs now. It wasn't quite like that. You either bought an old Colt or you bought, a Bushmaster or a Rock River or something like that, or I think there's a few DPMSs out there, that sort of thing, okay? So I didn't even see an AR until I bought my first AR, and it was actually an Armalite. It was an Armalite AR-180B, which is not even an AR. It's a kind of a hybrid of the 180 series. So that was the first black rifle I ever owned. And unfortunately, I don't have that rifle anymore. I wish I did, because they were cool. They were kind of crude and rudimentary and, kind of cheap. They were not a real high-end rifle back then, but there was a kind of a charm in that. Anyway, I digress. What got me down the rabbit hole that I'm on now? I think later in life, I began to really love and understand the engineering aspects of firearms. I love the way they, to learn how they worked. And, my time in the military just really taught me to respect engineering and to respect, more complicated gun designs and to respect what military soldiers, what soldiers go through in combat and what they go through in training, and to respect the tools of the soldier. So I think for me, I never really had much of a interest in military surplus rifles. I did not care anything about them until I got a little older. I think maybe when I was in my 20s or so, maybe 19 or 20 years old, that's when I started buying my first milsurps. And of course, being a poor high school kid or whatever, or, being a young kid that doesn't have a whole lot of money, I bought what I could afford. And yeah, I was buying like Turkish Mausers, and I was buying, M9130s for next to nothing. They were like, you could go to a gun show and buy them for $50 sometimes if you, paid cash. So yeah, I was buying some cheap milsurps and just having fun with them. That's what I started out at. And I would say any person who's wanting to get into collecting milsurp, even in today's market, probably the best thing they can do is just start out with what you can afford. Don't worry about what it is. Just pick up a few cool guns and start playing with them. Even if it's a little Carcano or if it's a 9130 you can find for a reasonable price, which doesn't hardly exist right now, or if you can find a K31 or something like that, or even just a little Mauser sporter. Well, I probably wouldn't buy a sporter if you're trying to go the milsurp route. But the point is, buy what you can afford and have fun with it. And that's what I did. In the early days, I was just playing around with milsurps. I got my first SKS. I thought that rifle was so freaking cool. You could load with stripper clips from the top. I thought that was such an interesting concept. And then, of course, the rest is history in terms of the channel. When you see everything that I've done, I started doing videos on milsurps and just trying to kind of document the performance and talk about the history and talk about the engineering and the way things are made. And that's always been the guise under which I collect firearms. I mean, why does a person need to collect firearms? Why do you need to have a giant collection of 400 or 500 guns? Well, at the time, and what continues to be the case now, although I will say I've gotten rid of a lot of my collection, however, what was always the case was that it was sort of a library. It was a library of engineering for me. So when I'm making my YouTube episodes, I can pull a gun out and I can compare actions. I can compare gas systems. I can compare, how things work. And that was really fascinating and important to me, and still is today. I really do love to know how things work. And I think that that's what really got me down the extreme rabbit hole of just wanting to own basically a variant of every dang thing I could possibly get my hands on. Because I want to be well-rounded. I wanted to know how things work. I wanted to know, what makes a SCAR different than an AR? What makes an AR different from an AK? And those rudimentary, things that we throw around that we take for granted and that we argue about in some petty way on the internet. But do we ever stop to really think what actually makes them different? The construction, materials, barrel lengths, barrel thicknesses. What are the harmonic differences between FALs and G3s? What are the barrel harmonics issues with M14s and PSLs and maybe even SVDs, right? What are these things come into play? What makes one gun more accurate than the other? Those kind of questions that over the years you kind of go, well, we know this rifle's accurate, but why? Why is it accurate? And that helps you build better tools moving forward, and also helps you select what tools are going to be the most useful to you as a gun owner. So I guess that's really what got me down the rabbit hole. I grew up around guns, really respected the engineering, of course got into black rifles, and it wasn't until later in life, I'd say by the time I was in maybe about my 30s, early 30s, is when I started to get into black powder, pretty hardcore. And that's also about when I got back into big bore air rifles really hardcore as well. My friend Rick Ward came up and brought one of the first Texans that I ever shot up to me from Air Force Air Guns. And he brought the 45 caliber Texan, and I was introduced to big bore pre-charged pneumatic air rifles by Rick Ward. My good friend lives here in Georgia as well. And Rick introduced me to big bore rifles in the air rifle category, and I was so fascinated with them. And then it got me on the black powder kick all over again, because the power of air rifles and black powder rifles are very similar, and the way that they kill game is very similar. The way the projectile actually makes the wound, the blood path, right? You have to create a wound channel for the blood to exit the animal. It's not like a shock factor of a modern high velocity bullet. They just sort of trudge along and just poke a gnarly hole in whatever they go through. Wherever that hole is, you have to live with, and you either hit the vital area or you don't. It's really easy to wound an animal with an air rifle or a black powder rifle if you're not careful. Shot placement is key. So anyway, I digress. The point I'm making is that those types of guns made me a better hunter. Yes, it's more challenging to use a black powder rifle when you're hunting. If you make a shot and you miss, you're probably not going to get a follow-up shot. Same goes for air rifles in many cases. So I think it made me a better hunter to hunt with air rifles and with black powder rifles. And plus for me, just the history. I mean, you can even see behind me, I believe there's still my Camelot back there. There's a Portuguese Navy contract Snider rifle and 577 Snider. So I really love cartridge-contained black powder cartridges like 4570, 577, the 577 450 Martini Henry. Of course, this Underhammer Camelot behind me from 1857. So I got into black powder and really enjoyed the art form of that. It's just really fun to play with black powder because it makes you a better shooter. You have to pay much better attention to cleaning your firearm when you're done, so you have to really take care of your guns well. So it becomes a regimented sort of art form. When you're playing around with black powder, it doesn't matter if you shoot 1 shot or 50 shots. You're going to have to clean your rifle really well regardless, okay? So you have to pay much better attention to your marksmanship. You have to keep the gun clean. You know, it's just a very regimented and exacting type of gun design that I always found really fascinating, and I'm glad that I got into it in later in life. So, you know, nowadays, okay, what drives me nowadays? I just turned 40. You know, where am I at as a gun guy? Well, I'm going to make a video sort of answering this question in a little more detail. I think it's going to merit another video, but I'll just say that nowadays, you know, I enjoy shooting black powder. I like big bore hunting rifles a lot, you know, bolt action, big bore hunting rifles. I've got a 9.3 by 62 Ruger M77 that I really love shooting. I love full length ARs. You know, I've been shooting this Colt a lot and really enjoying it. You know, I enjoy big bore auto loaders. You know, I love shooting my Scar. I am looking at maybe getting a 6.5 Creed auto loader of some sort, you know, something in the 6.5 category. But I think where I'm at now is, you know, I just enjoy performance. I like guns that shoot well. I like guns that are fascinating and historical. I love black powder. I love shooting cannons and artillery pieces, anything that burns up a whole lot of powder in one shot, really loud and obnoxious. You know, I like that sort of stuff. I find myself really loving shotguns now. I love auto-loading shotguns so much. I love my Benelli M4. I love my Vepr 12 gauge. It's such a cool shotgun. So there's so many things that I enjoy, and I love shooting rimfire a lot nowadays. I shoot a lot of 22 suppressed, especially full auto. I love shooting machine guns, obviously. So, you know, for me, I'm just a well-rounded gun owner. I love vintage stuff. I love black powder stuff. I love hunting rifles. I love shotguns. I love modern machine guns. I love shooting miniguns and Uzis and you name it. If it shoots a bullet, I'm probably all about it. And of course, I love cannons and other big bore black powder rifles and cannons and shotguns and things like that. So that's kind of been my vibe here lately, and that's what brings me joy in the gun world. So, you know, to be well-rounded. I love PCCs. I love 9mm PCCs. I did an episode sometime back talking about all of my favorite PCCs in one big roundup. That's a great video if you are interested in getting yourself some sort of a PCC. It covers the territory quite well if you check it out. It's the ultimate guide to PCCs. Check it out. Just search for it. You'll see it. It should be one of the first things that comes up. But anyway, thanks for that question. I wanted to answer it, and I get a lot of questions like this, and let me know. I hope these videos are not boring to you guys. Look, if I get a question enough and I think that holds some good merit and it's going to help society or maybe just answer a question that I feel like a lot of people are asking, I'm going to tend to want to make a video about it. So let me know if you like this concept for me just answering questions for you guys. I'll continue to do it. And I have gotten some questions as well. Look, we do have many more videos on the way. I've got a bunch of range content that I'm filming this upcoming week, some body armor reviews. I've got a couple of other cool things that I'm doing that I can't talk about just yet. I've also got some more cleaning videos. We're going to be doing some milcert cleanups and things, so some more gunsmithing content. I do have some reloading content planned. That's a little bit further out on the back burner, but I hope by the end of the year to have some more reloading content in the hat for you guys. So we're back. You know, things are rolling. I'm filming on the regular, 2 or 3 days a week, every week religiously. So, you know, we're trying to keep this bad boy rolling as best we can. So let me know what you guys would like to see, and I'll be happy to make as many videos as I can. So thank you so much. Many more on the way. We'll see you soon.